the Hamilton haze clears up, the airlines embrace the Lagos sky. It's a sign that the almost 6-day-old diversion of foreign airlines is over. This is not unconnected to the inclement weather in Lagos. The airlines affected include British Airways, Delta Airlines, Emirates Airlines, Air France, Qatar Airways and Rwanda Air. According to the airlines, the diversions of flights to Accra, Ghana was done in line with safety standards. Here in the departure hall, the passenger numbers speaks volumes. The airport manager tells us most of the flights are back to the terminal.
The weather has improved. We are up to 1,600, but before now we are having less than 600, which is the industry standard, and that's why we had all those diversions. Almost all the flights came in, almost except I think Emirates. Definitely the ILS that was procured is being worked on, and that was why we really had the issue. We were trying to upgrade from Cat 2 to Cat 3, and there are little issues which is being worked on seriously.
For this individual, the battle to leave Nigeria after his holidays back to his adopted country has come with so much hassle.
It's not really been fun because I'm supposed to have been at work today. Actually, I was supposed to fly on Friday to Atlanta, from Atlanta back to Houston. But unfortunately, we couldn't fly because they said that there was weather problem. But the truth is this. It's not about the weather problem. I do understand that our safety is being put into consideration. But at least you owe the people an email, an apology to let them know that, okay, this is what the situation is. But nobody said anything to us.
There are other passengers whose flights have not been diverted, but delayed.
We came to travel to Luanda in Angola. However, we found out that the flight was moved from 3:30 to 7:30. 2 days ago, they sent us, some of us got messages from them that they had moved the flight on. I think we need to get our acts together. Things are being done with too much easy here, and nobody cares about the customer's feeling. Even the regulating authorities are not showing enough interest in the way the customers feel.
Welcome back. Well, yes, indeed, talking about the aviation sector, I know that there are just so many issues when it comes to that particular sector, but, well, this is an opportunity to just highlight some of those and see what are we doing wrong, how do we improve, and where are we at the moment. Well, we've got two gentlemen here with us. Captain Ado Sanusi is an airline pilot, and then you also have Yemi Dada, who is an aviation consultant. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it is indeed, well, it's all over the place now, how this ILS, they were moving from Cat 2 to 3, but these things are avoidable, Captain, aren't they?
Yes, they are. They are actually something that you can plan. And there are two aspects to it, because there was bad weather, which was led to airlines cancellation or diversions. And then to add it to the bad weather is also the lack of the instrument landing system, which allows you to fly the airplane even if the weather is bad. So with good planning, I think when you decide to install an ILS, you plan the time to install it when the weather is good, when it will not affect flights, and you also try to tell the airlines that between this time, we're installing an ILS.
So it turns out, because I do know, there was an aircraft that was bought for calibration of those facilities. Yeah. So the airlines were not in communication as to what was going on.
I believe NAMA should have communicated to the airlines that, listen, we don't have this ILS Cat 3 in Lagos International Airport. And in fact, we don't have the ILS. If they were communicated to, then they would not start a flight from London or from France to come into Lagos, knowing fully well that they don't have the instrument landing system. So I believe there was either a communication gap or they were not informed. Now, the usual thing that happens is you plan for an upgrade of an ILS, you plan for it during a good weather a part of the year, and you inform the airlines, especially the international airlines, that listen, the 3 months or 2 months or 1 month, whatever the time takes to install it, you are going to have limited access to instrument landing system. So airlines will make a lot of plans to make sure that they either come in when the weather is VFR. VFR means visual, or they ensure that they cancel the flights or delay the flights.
But it's a different thing from what the aviation minister is saying, Mr. Adada, because the aviation minister says we do have the Cat 3 ILS installed, except that it developed maybe a little bit of issues that they needed to recalibrate, and it was during the recalibration that it took a turn for the worse in Lagos. And he talked about communication. Is it a problem of communication or the problem of the fact that the equipment are not on ground?
Well, I'll put it down to Murphy's Law. What will go wrong. And NAMA had actually planned for the Cat 3 installation for a while. Airlines have been clamoring to have it because during the Hamilton season, we have major airports shut down. It's been happening for many years. And when this administration came, they decided they were actually going to install Cat 3 in 4 airports, and they were going to start with 2, Abuja and Lagos, and they were going to move the ILS from Lagos to Akure, the one from Abuja to Minna. I was in a committee where I represented the AON in 2018, where this was already in an advanced stage of planning. But I believe because of budgetary constraints, this plan did not roll in until 2019. And as at November 2019, the MD of NAMA announced that they had installed the Cat 3 and they were testing.
In Lagos?
In Lagos. So I believe what actually happened now was that, just like the minister said, the Cat 3 was installed. It developed a problem. Weather, unfortunately, moved against them at that time. And once the minima is changed because of the visibility issues, if it had happened that they were aware before time, they will have issued a notice to airmen, what is called a NOTAM, and they will know from before they depart from their points of origin that this problem existed.
So if they were aware?
Yes, if the problem had developed before.
Don't they have a way of checking and
yeah,
distance?
you will find out as you operate that there is a challenge. Yeah. And as that comes in, there's a process in which a NOTAM is issued. Probably those flights were already inbound before that was discovered. But the one that makes it more concerning is the fact that some of these airlines now diverted to countries other than Nigeria. Because this minister had pursued a policy of giving multiple entry points to international...
Did they have a choice?
They have a choice. Diversion is based on one technical reason, so you have fuel and all that. And then if you have a station there, you can divert to that station. So for example, British Airways operates into Abuja on a daily basis. So if you're coming into Lagos and you're going to divert to another place carrying majority of Nigerians, it makes sense to divert to Abuja rather than to Accra.
Now, this issue was raised at the National Assembly yesterday, and I recall one of the representatives saying maybe we should force them to complete the installation of this. Is that even possible?
Force the completion of the installation of the ILS?
ILS, yes.
The ILS has been installed. The NOTAM I saw yesterday, as at 13:30 hours, says it's functional and calibrated, which means everything is back to normal, as at yesterday. So this, as I was saying, must have been something, a gap that just happened and something they couldn't quickly contain. And it became worse because of the actions of the carriers who now diverted to different countries.
So there should be no diversions whatsoever from now?
No, diversion is part of the process. It's allowed in aviation. It's actually for safety reasons. You could come into an airport and have it closed, not because of even the ILS or anything. That could be an accident.
Yeah. No, I'm saying based on the ILS.
Based on the ILS, you could plan like Emirates did when they found out it wasn't working. they suspended their flights to Lagos.
Oh, okay.
And then they were carrying people to other, because they also operate into Abuja.
But Captain, what kind of considerations do pilots take before you divert planes?
Yeah, but I have to go back to we're talking about Lagos Airport, the Nigeria's gateway airport. We have 2 runways there. I think we have to tell ourselves some truth. I believe when you're going to install an ILS on one of the runways, you must make sure the other runway is serviceable, that it will take all traffic. This is the gateway to Nigeria. It is one of the most important airports in Africa. So I don't think, I know equipment fails, but I don't think hindsight, I don't think we planned very well. Because if we had planned very well, the 2 runways, one would have been working while we're installing the other one.
Irrespective of the Cat 3?
Irrespective of the Cat 3. The reason why I say that is the Cat 3, the weather fell below 800 meters for a few days, maybe a day or 2, and it went to 900 meters. Now, when it went to 900 meters, all the 2 ILSs, both on the international and the domestic runway, were not serviceable. And that is the reason for the diversion. So, and they diverted. I believe we should not blame the airlines for diverting into other countries, because an airliner will always choose an alternate, and they have a reason for choosing those alternates. There are criteria that you look before you choose an alternate. Now, for airlines coming in from Europe, of course, they would like to choose an alternate that will give them all the necessary assistance they can have.
What about airlines coming from North America?
The same thing. They are all coming through.
Can they divert, go back to North America?
No. Because of lack of fuel, they cannot carry that amount of fuel. But believe me, if they can, they will. They will. So, but they can't.
Because there are some passengers who were narrating their deal, saying that I think they came from Atlanta and then they took them back to Atlanta.
Well,
thought,
probably they turn back when they can turn back, but you can't fly all the way from Atlanta to Lagos and then fly back to Atlanta. I don't think they have the fuel capacity to do that.
So I know the saying, pardon me, is that safety over comfort. I mean, when it comes to taking the decision, you have to go for safety first. But then you hear the passengers narrating their experience. Some say, we didn't get word. I mean, this just fell on us, and they expect us to just deal with it without perhaps sending an email apologizing to us. And that brings to bear the talk about how airlines treat customers.
Yes, you see, the airlines, of course, we have to look at the conventions, the protocols, and everything that governs the carriage of passengers. I mean, this has started since 1929 with the Warsaw Convention. So if an airline treats a passenger wrongly, the problem is it's an international issue. We have about 60 countries that have different laws protecting passengers. And IATA is trying to unify these processes and these laws so that a passenger will know his rights. In the case of diversion, let's take, for instance, an airline, let's say British Airways, coming from London to Lagos, diverted to Accra. I mean, real happened. So there are 3 laws that are governing that passenger. First, the registry of the country, that is UK. Secondly, it landed in Accra. Third, its destination is Nigeria. So you as a passenger, you have all those rights because you are taken from UK. So the UK laws regarding protection or your rights are there. You landed in Accra. So the Ghanaian laws protecting passengers are there, and you're coming to Lagos, Nigeria. So those laws also are governed by you. So it's kind of messy when it comes to what are my rights.
At that point in time. All right, we'll get to that in a moment, but I just need to get Mr. Dadazuri's view about those landing facilities. For instance, if the ones in Lagos are not functioning, then they had to divert. But what about when, Captain, maybe you may come in eventually, when we also see no communication from airlines, and eventually the time they tell you flights are cancelled within Nigeria now, not international flights, within Nigeria. Why do we also have those kind of challenge? Flights cancelled and you tell poor visibility, you can't land in some areas, if it's just Lagos that the ILS isn't functioning?
Well, the challenge for many airlines, one is poor customer service can come into play. But again, if Lagos goes out, many flights originate out of Lagos. And then there's this chain effect. You're probably waiting and seeing, you're getting meteorological information every 30 minutes or an hour to see if weather is improving. And then you repurpose your flights. You don't want to tell a passenger, look, this is cancelled, and weather suddenly improves. And sometimes people are waiting too long to let the passengers know that this is happening. So the challenge of the environment sometimes also comes into play, because if they don't have the disruption in the first place, passengers won't go through this.
But sorry, Chumilin, in your response to the same question, Captain, you speak to the fact that the fact of the lack of communication to the passengers, because many wait hours and they don't get communication from the airline, they don't get communication from airport management. How do we factor in their rights at that time?
Well, first, if it's a delay, the airline must communicate that. And if they refuse to, I think, you see, when a passenger buys a ticket from an airline, he has entered into a contract, and the terms of the contracts are in the terms of carriage on that ticket. So if there is no communication, there is a violation of his rights. Because if there is a delay more than 3 hours, there is what we call care and assistance that you give the passenger. First, you will have to inform him there is a delay for 3 hours, and then you probably, depending on whether it's an international flight or how long is the flight. If it's a local flight, you probably give him some refreshment. And if he's already checked in and it's an international flight, you probably will give him accommodation. So there might be monetary reward too. You know, there are so many things, but
yeah.
As I said, it's a contract that you've entered with the airline.
Yeah, but who enforces that contract on behalf, for the passengers? Because most times it will seem like airlines take the passenger for granted.
You see, it's the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority that should enforce it and penalize the airlines if they are trampling on passenger rights, because they have the passenger bill of rights and all that. But the passenger also can take the airline to court.
But Captain, before we even go further on all of these rights and the causative factors, why do those things happen? Why do we have that challenge? Because if we have these facilities in our local airports, why do they keep cancelling, shifting, disrupting flights? Why do they happen so often?
Well, first, delays, cancellation must happen in aviation.
But not with this kind of frequency, is it?
Yeah, yes, it shouldn't be with this frequency. You know, delays, cancellation. First, airlines don't want to delay flights. We also want to make sure because what we're selling is speed. If you're going to Abuja, you want to get to Abuja on time, or you go by road. So what we're selling is speed and efficiency and safety, of course, the first one. So the airlines delay flights because it's totally out of their control. Oh. But now, the question will be, why would this be happening more in our sector or in our area? Probably we don't have good weather reporting system. Maybe we don't forecast the weather very well to know that, tomorrow the visibility in Abuja is going to be below minimal, and so we tell the passengers immediately that, listen, our first flight is not going to operate because of weather. So we can tell the passengers, you don't have to come by 7. We have shifted the flight to maybe 6 o'clock, when we have seen the forecast of the weather that by 6 the visibility will be good. Now, other things is that most of the airlines are operating on thin, because they utilize all their aircrafts. So a delay on one aircraft will translate into delay of other
But
services.
it appears many of them take on much more than they can chew.
Yes, if you say that, yeah. There, as I said, the number of aircrafts have been reduced in the past 1 year in the country. So, and the airlines try to keep up to their routes.
You're going to say something?
Yeah, sometimes it's a queuing theory problem. If you take the General Aviation Terminal where ARIC and Air Peace operate from, these are airlines that have some of the largest fleets for airlines in the domestic. And you have just one security screening point. There are no avio bridges. Between 6:30 and 7 o'clock, there are probably about 8 departures from that terminal. And you have to go through one security screening point, get into buses, take you to the apron. That process itself takes time. So before they get the passengers on board, they're already experiencing delays. Now those airplanes taxi out about the same time, and then they queue up to take off. Once you get onto that queue, you're releasing some, and some airplanes are already arriving. You probably are 1 hour behind already.
Yeah, but if the airline, they know all of this before the time, they've been operating for years, they could have factored, improved.
Improving the infrastructure is key. That is what I'm trying to say. Improving the infrastructure for that. If you're operating from MM2, for example, you probably don't have as much of a challenge. They have avio bridges, but they don't even have enough space.
Yeah, but even with the current infrastructure, they know all of this timing. They can calculate all of those and still meet up with the time. Since they're selling time and speed and efficiency, they can factor all of this in and then build it into the timing.
Right, but you've already invested money in your aircraft. You don't want to keep the aircraft sitting on the ground. You already have challenges because there are airports you can't operate into based on daylight operations and so on and so forth. Well, so, like you said, it boils down to being biting more than you can chew.
So that is the major problem.
Constrained by the
But regulation is also important here. If the authorities don't enforce all of this, maybe they feel if regulation is slack, I got away with it the first time out, I might get away with it again. For instance, take a look at the passenger bill of rights. They tell us that, well, you're supposed to see it in the airport when you get there. I don't know, maybe I passed the wrong route. I checked, I don't see those things pasted. I try to look, or maybe I'm too much in a hurry. But in terms of enforcing this passenger bill of rights, if we could look at rights to compensations, for instance, 1.3 talks about delayed flights. And then there's that section about sub 1 on domestic flights. If you're delayed beyond 1 hour, the carrier shall provide refreshments, telephone calls, SMS, email. If you're delayed beyond 2 hours, the carrier shall reimburse passengers the full value of their ticket. This sounds like a mirage here because maybe I've not, I don't know. We've never seen these things enforced as much as it should be.
Well, you see, again, the passenger bill of rights, it's a good thing to have, but you have to also look at it. What caused the airline to delay? Let's say I'm going to Abuja and there's ECOWAS meeting, and then there's a VIP movement. The airport is closed.
But
so, am I going to be
is that supposed to be part of the consideration?
Am I going to be penalized as an airline?
Oh,
because
dear.
I'm ready, I've boarded the flight, but they're telling me that I can't go to Abuja.
Again, I asked that question.
Yeah.
Whose responsibility is it to enforce these rights?
It's Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority.
If it's Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, is it the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority that I paid air tickets to, fees to?
No, but part of your ticket goes to them.
And
taxes.
And
Yes.
saying now that
5% actually.
seeing now that the DG of the NCA has been confirmed
Yes.
by the Senate, a lot of expectations. If you could just touch on that, what are you expecting to change?
Well, I think, we must address the aviation sector, especially from the regulatory side of things, so that we can, we do not want to overregulate the airlines and they lose money. And we also have to protect the passengers. So if there is a genuine delay because of due to the lack of planning on the airline side, yes, of course, they have to be compensated.
But Captain.
But you talked about refund of tickets. again, you have to look at the context. How did you buy your ticket? Did you buy it online? If I'm going to refund, am I going to refund you in cash? Or I'm going to refund it to the card you bought the ticket in? Or did you buy your ticket from outside the country as a package? How am I going to refund you? So all that.
Well, they can always ask the passenger, how do you want to be refunded?
Of course, that's what the airlines does. So they ask the passengers, how do you want your refund? But they will be constrained if the ticket was bought with a card, because you have to refund it to that card.
Okay, but when you say, well, look, whose fault is it? That doesn't happen all the time when there's an ECOWAS movement or there's a delay.
Okay.
And when it does happen, is it against the ethics for the pilots or the airlines to inform the passengers why that happened? They always go under one umbrella,
okay.
Operational reasons.
Okay. I believe the airlines must report to the passengers all the time what is exactly happening. I don't think airlines should say operational reasons. But there are times the closure of an airport is operations. So you say operational reasons. If you have a technical problem, you tell them that you are delaying because of a technical problem. Now, if you have a weather problem, you tell them because of weather you are delaying the flights. Now, if the airline has no control over the delay, like closure of an airport, weather, do you think the airline should be penalized for that? I don't think the airline should be penalized for that. But I think if they refuse to make an effort to report to the passengers, there's that delay, yes, they can be penalized for that.
Well, on the Mr. Dada, your final words.
Well, there's a lot going on in the industry. And there's been quite a bit of improvement over time. But I think we still have quite a number of things that have to be done. Infrastructure has to be the key focus of the administration. Get better terminals, get better aprons, fix the runways, fix the navigational aids, and support the local players.
Well, one quick one. Well, what happens in a case where a passenger who maybe flies on a foreign airline was supposed to land in Lagos, and then he was taken to Dakar? What kind of compensation happens in that?
Oh, and then returned
to Lagos? Where?
back to Atlanta.
Oh, dear.
Return back to Atlanta. Well,
What
you
happens?
see, when you're going to report that, when the passenger has rights, and as I described earlier, that in fact there are three jurisdictions in that case, because it first originated from US, landed in Dakar, and is bound to come to Lagos. So there are about three jurisdictions. But the main person to report this to is the FAA, because that is the country.
America.
That's America, because that's the country where the airline is registered, and that is the country where you entered into agreement with the airline because you bought your ticket there. So you should actually report that to FAA, or they have. I think they have a passenger travel protection agency where just like we have the Bill of Rights.
All right, so there you go. The many challenges of the aviation sector, hoping that all of this will be sorted. Captain Ado Sanusi, airline pilot, and Yemi Dada, aviation consultant. Gentlemen, thank you again for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
We're back in a moment. Stay with us.